3.1 Solving quadratic equations by factoring. This does begin on page 71. We're going to go over some vocab first. So let's say we have the function f of x equals a times x minus c. If we're asked to find the zero of f of x, that means you're looking at this part of the equation. Well, the zero is following the zero factor property. That's what the official name is. So we have a could be 0, but then everything's going to be 0. Or we're going to have a as a number, and then x minus c can equal 0. That's where it stems from. So then we go x minus c equals 0, and we solve this for x, so x equals c. So in this case, if I wanted to find the 0 of f of x, that would be x equals c. If we're asked to find the root of f of x, that is the exact same thing as the 0 of f of x, so that is x equals c as well. If we're asked to find the solution of f of x, that is the exact same thing as root or 0 of f of x, so it's x equals c. Yes, there are 3 different ways you can say the same thing. A factor of f of x would be just the x minus c. And the x-intercept of f of x is when y equals 0, we get a times x minus c. Again, we could have a equals 0 or x minus c equals 0. A is a real number, so it can't equal 0. So x minus c can equal 0. In this case, x equals c. And so our x-intercept is y is 0, x is c. Let's start some questions on page 73. Question 1. Fill in the blank with the appropriate word or number. A. The equation ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 is called a quadratic equation. By the zero factor property, if x plus 2 times x minus 5 equals 0, then, well, this term could equal 0, so x plus 2 can equal 0, so x equals minus 2. And this term can equal 0. In that case, x will equal 5. So the two answers here are x equals minus 2 and x equals 5. C. The quadratic equation 2x minus 3 times x plus 1 equals 0 has solutions. Again, we're going to be doing the zero factor property. So 2x minus 3 can equal 0. We'll solve this for x. The second term could also be equal to 0, so let's solve it for x. X can equal 3/2, or x can equal negative 1. D. The general form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. The equation AB equals 0, this is like factoring already. We have a times b equals 0, so maybe a is 0, so 0 times a number 0, or b could be 0, so a number times 0 equals 0. So that implies that a equals 0 or b equals 0. 3x minus 2 times x plus 2 is a quadratic function. If the quadratic equation ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 has c equal to 0, then something must be a solution because something is a factor. Okay, let's write this out. There's our general equation, and c equals 0. And let's factor this. So we'll factor out an x. And now we can use the zero factor property. So x could equal 0, or ax plus b could equal 0. So in this case, with G, the way the sentence is worded, I would say then 0 must be a solution because x is a factor. I do realize there's two factors, but it's just the way it's worded. And That is also a factor. H, the equation of the x-axis is y equals 0. Question 2. Perform the indicated operations. 2a is solve 3x minus 5 times x plus 3 equals 0. And we're also going to do 2b, which is simplify 3x minus 5 times x plus 3. When we're solving, we are looking for the roots or the solutions or the zeros. So this is where we say this first term could equal 0, or this second term could equal 0. Let's find the solution. So 3x minus 5 can equal 0, or x plus 3 can equal 0. So there's two answers for 2a, x equals 5/3 or x equals -3. When we're asked to simplify, we need to multiply this out. So we're FOILing. And that's your simplification. Question 4. Use the graph of y equals f of x to solve the quadratic equation f of x equals 0. If I look at my graph for 4b, if I look at my graph, there's a lot of information I can get from it. I can get my vertex, I can get my x-intercepts, I can get my y-intercepts, but remember my x-intercepts are going to be the same as my solution, and I've been asked to solve. So I'm looking for my solution, zeros, or roots. I have two roots, two x-intercepts. X equals 1, so 1, 0, and I also have x equals 3. So from this one I can get x is going to equal 1. This one I have x equals 3. If I look at my equation, x squared minus 4x plus 3 equals 0, and I factor that, and now I use the 0 property, so I have x minus 3 equals 0, and I have x minus 1 equals 0. I get x equals 3 and x equals 1. So there's two ways to find the solution. You can use a 0 property method, or if you have the graph, you can read the zeros off the graph. Question 5. Find the x-intercepts for each quadratic equation. For this one, we have a quick sketch. I'm doing F, and that's kind of what it looks like. There's no scale on it, so we can't read any numbers off the graph. We know it opens down, and yes, it opens down because we have a -1/3 here, but we're still asked to find the x-intercepts, or solve it, or find the roots, or find the zeros. It means all the same thing. Okay, so we're going to factor out the -1/3 first. Watch your signs. We're looking for our x-intercepts or solution or zeros or roots. So that's when y equals 0. So I have a number times 0. I'm looking at x squared minus 9. I can factor that further. That's the difference of squares. So I have a number times possibly 0 times a number, or I have a number times 0. So both of those brackets can equal 0. So I have x minus 3 can equal 0. In that case, x is going to equal 3. And x plus 3 can also equal 0, in case that means x equals -3. So our answer is plus or minus 3. If I want to write this as a coordinate, because it's asking for the x-intercepts, it would be 3, 0 and -3, 0. Question 6. Solve the equation and check your solutions. 6h. X times x minus 2 times x minus 2 equals 0. We're going to first solve the equation. X could equal 0. X minus 2 can equal 0. And this x minus 2 could equal 0. Let's solve these ones. So x equals 0, that's good. That's going to be an x equals 2. And this is also going to be an x equals 2. So actually this is called a double root. So when you're graphing it, that's going to turn right at that point. So we have two possible answers. X equals 0 is a possible answer, x equals 2 is a possible answer, and that is also x equals 2. So let's check. And by checking, what they mean is putting it back into the equation to see if it is a valid answer. So let's first check x equals 0. So just put it back into my equation. And I'm just going to see if it works. I have 0 times, that's just going to be 0. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. 0 times negative 2 is 0. And 0 times negative 2 is 0. So that is true. 0 does equal 0. So that is true, which means x equals 0 is an answer. Let's check x equals 2. So we have 2 times 2 minus 2. 2 minus 2 equals 0. Remember brackets first. 2 minus 2 is 0. 2 minus 2 is 0. 2 times 0 times 0 is 0. And so that works. Now we know that those are both answers. So x equals 0 and x equals 2 are both answers. If you get a strange thing like you end up with 5 equals 0, that does not work and that will not be a solution. 7. Solve the equation and check your solutions. 7h. X plus 5 times x plus 3 equals 5x plus 25. First thing I'm noticing is it's not equal to 0, so now I have to multiply this out, simplify it, and then I can factor it and solve it. Okay, so let's FOIL. And we're going to simplify a little bit. It's a general equation for a quadratic now, so I can factor this. X plus 5 times x minus 2 equals 0, so x plus 5 can equal 0. In that case, x is going to be equal to negative 5. X minus 2 can also equal 0. We have two possible answers, x equals minus 5 and x equals 2. Let's check. I'm going to go back up to the equation. So I have 5, negative 5 plus 5 times negative 5 plus 3 equals 5 times negative 5 plus 25. We're going to simplify. Remember, you do the stuff in the brackets first. And negative 5 is an answer. Let's try x equals 2. And x equals 2 is the answer. The nice thing about checking, other than getting marks for it because I tell you to do it, is that you know that you have your question correct. Let's try 8. Solve the equation and check your solutions. H. X minus 4 over x minus 3 plus x minus 2 over x minus 3 equals x minus 3. We first have to turn this into something that looks like a quadratic. So let's get rid of the fractions. I'm going to be multiplying everything by x minus 3. And I'm just going to rewrite this for you. You don't need to rewrite it, but I'm going to. I'm going to use something I call the murderous math method. I'll explain it with something a little bit easier. Let's say I have 2 times 3 divided by 3. Well, we know that is 6 over 3, and 6 over 3 equals 2. But let's say we just use the factors. Since I am multiplying, I can divide. You can always do the opposites, right? And there's no plus or minus sign in the top, so I can divide. 3 divided by 3 is 1, so they kill each other. And I end up with 2 times 1 divided by 1. Well, 2 times 1 is 2 divided by 1. I love dividing by 1. It is equal to 2. I'm going to use the same method. These are multiplied. And since it's inside the brackets, I can treat it as a term. So x minus 3 divided by x minus 3 is equal to 1. X minus 3 divided by x minus 3 is equal to 1. If you do that, you will save yourself a ton of work, and it will make the question a lot easier. Alternatively, you will need to FOIL everything and then add them all together and then multiply both sides. Again, that's just a lot of work. So let's just do the murderous math method, and we end up with x minus 4 plus x minus 2 equals x minus 3 times x minus 3. Again, let's simplify this a little bit. And now we factor, find our zeros, and our other 0, and check our answer. Three minus 4 is negative 1, divided by 0. We have a problem. You cannot divide by 0. You divide by 0, you get an error. It does not exist. So therefore, this is not an answer. It is, you can either write does not exist. You can write down undefined. Technically, it is called an extraneous root. It is not an answer. Let's check x equals 5. Okay, the second one, x equals 5, is an answer. So you have one answer to this question. Question 9. Write a quadratic equation with the given solutions. They're telling us the solutions. So I can rewrite this as x equals negative 3/4 and x equals 1/3. I have to work backwards. Okay, so if x equals negative 3/4, that means that came from x plus 3/4, and my x equals 1/3 came from x plus 1/3. So I can FOIL this now. I'm going to make that equal to f of x. I don't like fractions, and you can't have fractions in the general equation, so let's multiply everything by 12, get rid of the fractions. Twelve divided by 4 is 3, so 3 times 3 is 9. 12 divided by 3 is 4. 1 times 4 is 4, so that's a negative 4x. 12 divided by 12 is 1. Let's just simplify this a little bit. However, you might not want to multiply fractions together, so there is another method that you can use. We start off the same way because that was our answer. We're going to the question. For x equals negative 3 over 4, I can multiply both sides by 4. I get 4x equals minus 3. And this would have come from 4x plus 3 equals 0. My x equals 1/3, multiply both sides by 3. Subtract 1 from both sides. Those would be my two terms. And I can FOIL this. Simplify. Both methods work. You can choose which one you want to do. It depends on if you like fractions or not.